Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Gary, and I have a question for you. How long can someone tolerate disrespect in a relationship before they finally walk away? How many times do you let things slide? How many times do you swallow your feelings just to keep the peace? How many times do you convince yourself that it's not that serious? Because, for me, what she did at her birthday party was the last straw. It pushed me past the point of return. I'm just going to tell it exactly how it happened, from my point of view. So before you conclude, watch till the end. The truth is, I didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave. This story was built on years of small moments, things said and unsaid, things I ignored, and things I tried to fix. But that night, something broke. And once it broke, there was no going back. Every tragic love story starts with a beautiful beginning, and the one I had with my wife, Pamela, was no exception. The first time I met her, it honestly felt like fate stepped in and pressed pause on everything around me. She was beautiful, with this calm confidence in how she carried herself. But it wasn't just her looks that drew me to her. She was smart, witty, and carried conversations with such ease that I found myself wanting to spend more time around her. And when we started talking, it felt like we just clicked. You couldn't have told me otherwise back then. I truly believed she was made for me. Our relationship moved fast, and it felt right. I was convinced we were a perfect match. If anyone had tried to tell me she wasn't the one, I would have told them they didn't know what they were talking about. So, naturally, I proposed. And when she said yes, it felt like life was giving me everything I had ever wanted. But then we got married and moved in together, and slowly, things started to shift. Little habits that didn't show up while we were dating. I told myself it was just part of adjusting to married life. Everyone has flaws, right? And I loved her, so I overlooked them. I gave her grace the same way I'd want someone to give me grace. But what I didn't realize at the time was that these were signs of deeper things I hadn't seen when we were caught up in love and excitement. Before long, those little flaws started becoming harder to ignore. I've always seen myself as the kind of man who'd have a small family of 1 or 2 kids running around the house. It's something I grew up believing was part of what made life full. Not having kids wasn't even something I ever considered. So naturally, when I married Pamela, I just assumed we were on the same page. We never had a deep conversation about it, which, looking back now, was a huge mistake on my part. I assumed that, because we were getting married, she wanted what I wanted. Isn't that part of why people get married? To build a life together, raise a family? I didn't pick up on any signs that she felt differently. She never mentioned not wanting children, not once while we were dating. So, in my mind, it was just understood. But after we got married and the real life stuff started to settle in, she told me one evening that she wasn't thinking about having kids anytime soon. She said she wasn't in a hurry and wanted to focus on other things. It caught me off guard. I didn't argue with her, though. I told myself that as time went by, she'd start to feel the shift in her body and thoughts. Like when her biological clock started ticking, she'd naturally want to have a child. I didn't want to pressure her. I thought I was being patient. But deep down, I knew I was ignoring a red flag. I just didn't want to face it at the time. Pamela had this habit that became more and more apparent the longer we were married. When she wanted something, it was non-negotiable. There was no room for discussion, no space for compromise. It didn't matter what anyone else wanted. I remember during our dating years, I was more than happy to do anything to make her happy. I would go out of my way to meet her needs and to make her feel special. But as time passed and we settled into married life, I realized that her need for control wasn't just a little thing. It was something that touched everything in our lives together. The more she got what she wanted, the more I was left feeling like my own needs didn't matter. There was also something else going on, something that felt more subtle, but was no less impactful. It was like she saw herself as somehow superior to me in the marriage. She would make these little comments, these condescending remarks. And the worst part was, whenever she did agree to bend on something, she would frame it as though she was settling. She wasn't compromising, she was settling. That word hit me every time she said it, because it was like she was telling me that she was doing me a favor by being with me. It felt like I was being tolerated, not loved. It got to a point where I started to feel like she was holding all the cards, while I was just left playing catch-up. Even though I worked hard to maintain balance in our home, while also working full-time, I could feel this growing sense that she thought of herself as the superior partner. She didn't seem to acknowledge the work I put into everything, both at home and outside of it. Pamela worked, too, but I was the one covering most of the household expenses. That dynamic started to eat at me. I felt like no matter how much I contributed, it was never enough to earn her respect. It felt like I was doing everything I could to keep the household running smoothly, but in her eyes, that didn't seem to matter. She acted like I owed her something for being in this marriage. She didn't say it outright, but the way she carried herself, the little remarks, the way she would make everything about her own needs and desires, it all painted a picture that she thought she was doing me a favor by being with me. As the months went on, I started trying to talk about all this with her. I thought maybe if I could express how I was feeling, how this behavior was affecting me, it would help her understand. But whenever I brought it up, it was like I was speaking a different language. She would dismiss my concerns, brushing them off, saying, "You're just stirring up problems where there aren't any." The more I tried to communicate, the more she shut me down. That kind of reaction created a gap between us, and she didn't seem to care. Pamela didn't make any effort to close that gap. She never tried to understand what I was going through. Instead, I just found myself spending more time at the office and more time in my study, trying to escape the tension at home. When I did come home, it felt like we were just roommates, sharing space without any real connection. We hardly spoke, hardly interacted, except for the occasional surface-level conversations. For months, this was our reality. We were like two strangers living under the same roof. The only time we would act like a couple was when we were in public, attending events, or hanging out with friends. Basically, anytime we had to put on a show for others. That's when we'd pretend everything was fine, playing the part of the happy couple. But once the events were over, we'd go back to being emotionally distant, hardly speaking, each of us retreating into our own world. It was like we were living parallel lives, never really meeting in the middle, never really seeing each other for who we truly were anymore. Pamela's 30th birthday was coming up, and for me, it felt like a chance to reconnect with her. I was tired of the distance between us, tired of the silence that stretched for months. So, I saw her birthday as an opportunity to show her that I still cared, that I wasn't ready to just give up on us. I thought if I made it special enough, we could find our way back to each other. But I'll admit, I wasn't sure exactly what I was supposed to do. I wanted it to be perfect, but I had no idea where to start. Then one evening, Pamela came into the living room with a suggestion. "I think I'll throw a small party for my 30th birthday," she said casually. That was when I saw my opening, the chance I needed to make a real effort. I could still surprise her, still show her that I wanted to make things work. Without even thinking about it, I volunteered to handle the whole thing. I told her, "Let me take care of the party arrangements. You don't have to worry about a thing." I figured if I could take the burden off her, maybe it would show her that I was trying to step up. The relief on her face was immediate. She smiled and kissed me, and I could see how thankful she was. I was determined to pull this off. I got in touch with an event planner to help bring it all together. The whole thing had to be perfect. I didn't want her to have any reason to complain. We discussed everything, every detail, from the decorations to the menu, to make sure it was exactly what Pamela would like. I went all in. Extra flowers, custom invitations, music, lighting. I didn't hold back. When the day finally arrived, the house looked amazing. Everything was in place. It was all done the way I'd imagined it. I felt a small sense of pride as I saw the result. The guests started arriving. Friends, colleagues, and some people I wasn't even sure Pamela truly cared about. But that didn't matter now. Pamela, as always, was the star of the show. She was dazzling. She glowed in the spotlight, laughing and chatting with everyone, floating through the crowd. I couldn't help but admire her. There she was, looking more beautiful than I'd ever seen her. I kept thinking about the quiet moment we'd have after the party, just the two of us. I was looking forward to it, the time when I could give her the special gift I had prepared, something from my heart. Maybe if I could just find the right words, we could finally have that real conversation. So I hoped. As the night wore on and the party continued, the energy was lively, with everyone mingling, chatting, and enjoying themselves. Then, the moment arrived, and Pamela stood up to give her birthday speech. At first, it seemed like any other speech you'd hear at a celebration. She started by thanking everyone for coming and for making her feel so special. There was the usual talk about how grateful she was for the people in her life and how much she appreciated the love and support she'd received over the years. She even reflected on turning 30, acknowledging how different things were from when she was younger and how everything had worked out so perfectly in her life so far. But then she smiled, looking around at the group of people who'd gathered there to celebrate her, and added, "Yeah, everything's been perfect. Aside, I guess I kinda settled for Gary." As the sentence finished, the room erupted in laughter. The people around her found it funny, light-hearted, maybe a little cheeky. But I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The moment she said it, it felt like the room spun for me. It wasn't a joke to me, and it wasn't funny. I've heard those words before in passing, in the heat of small arguments, but this time it was public. That phrase, settling for me, had been a wound for months, maybe even longer. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but tonight, hearing it felt like a raw cut that just wouldn't stop bleeding. It was like she just told the world that I was the consolation prize, the runner-up in her life. The laughter from everyone else made it worse. As she continued mingling with guests after the speech, I knew I couldn't pretend like everything was fine. I wasn't going to let her degrade me like that, not again, not in front of anyone. So, without saying a word to anyone, I turned and walked away. When I got to our bedroom, I packed what I needed. I didn't look back. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in a house, in a life, with someone who thought so little of me. A few hours passed in silence, but I knew Pamela was still with guests. Later, my phone buzzed. It was her. I could feel a wave of frustration well up in me, but I took a deep breath before checking the message. It was short and direct. "Where are you?" I didn't reply. I was too pissed off to even come up with a response that wouldn't escalate things further. Then came a phone call. I saw her name flash across the screen. I let the phone ring 5 times before finally picking it up. I could tell by the way the call was coming through that she was desperate for me to pick up. Before she could even say anything, I cut her off. "I'm tired of your humiliation, Pamela," I said. Tonight was the last straw. There was a pause on the other end. I don't know if it was shock or confusion. Pamela, as usual, acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. She tried to pretend that the whole situation was some kind of misunderstanding, trying to downplay everything. She said, "It was just a harmless joke. You're throwing a tantrum over something so little." I could feel my blood pressure rising. A tantrum. That's what she thought this was? That single sentence felt like a slap across the face. The truth was right in front of me. She had never respected me enough to truly understand my emotions. She couldn't care less about how I felt as long as things stayed the way she wanted. I didn't even let her finish her sentence. I ended the call. I didn't need to hear any more. I already knew what she thought, and it wasn't worth wasting my breath. She called again, and again. I didn't pick up. I wasn't going to be drawn into a conversation that would only make me feel worse. After a while, I saw a new message from her. She was trying to backpedal to make herself feel better, and to convince me that nothing was wrong. "It was just a harmless joke," she wrote. "I didn't mean to offend you." I stared at the screen, looking at the message, but her words meant nothing to me anymore. She would say anything to make herself feel better, but it didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line. This time, though, there was no turning back. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. She had shown me how she truly felt about me, and I wasn't about to pretend I didn't see it. Weeks had passed since that night. Pamela's messages, her constant calling, her pleading, none of it changed how I felt. I knew I couldn't keep pretending it didn't matter. So, I did what I had to do. I went to a divorce lawyer to end the marriage, because I was the one losing here. He served her the divorce papers. I was happy to get out of this toxic situation. 2 days later, I went back to the house to collect the rest of my things. As I grabbed my belongings, she found me, tears streaming down her face. She begged me to remember the vows we'd made, to think about what we had shared. She could cry all she wanted, but her tears didn't change the fact that the damage had already been done. "That doesn't concern me anymore," I said. The vows she wanted me to remember? She had already broken them, and so had I. As I look back on everything, some life lessons stand out the most in this situation. These are things I wish someone had told me before all of this happened. I want to share them with you because if you're going through something similar, or even if you're just thinking about your future relationships, you need to know this. 1. Never assume shared values without having real conversations before marriage. Before we got married, I assumed Pamela and I were on the same page about wanting kids. But I never really asked her about those things in the way I should have. I didn't take the time to sit down and have a deep conversation about our future. You can't just assume your partner shares your values and goals. You have to talk about it clearly and honestly before you make that kind of commitment. I learned that the hard way. Don't make that mistake. 2. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, even in jokes, believe them. That's how they see you. Pamela's harmless jokes weren't harmless at all. The way she would joke about settling for me wasn't just a playful remark. That was how she really saw me. When someone constantly puts you down, even in ways that seem small at first, don't ignore it. It's not just a joke, it's a reflection of how they view you. And if you let it slide, they'll keep doing it. 3. Silence in a relationship isn't always peace. Sometimes it's slow destruction. I used to think that the quiet in our home meant peace. I thought that since we weren't fighting, since we weren't yelling at each other, maybe things weren't so bad. But what I learned was that silence wasn't peace, it was distance. It was me withdrawing and her doing the same. We stopped talking, we stopped sharing. The longer I stayed silent, the more the relationship deteriorated. It's like a slow burn. You don't feel it at first, but eventually you realize you're burning away everything that mattered. Don't confuse silence for peace. It's just a sign that things are falling apart, little by little. 4. When someone consistently dismisses your feelings, they are telling you exactly what you're worth to them. The worst part was how Pamela reacted when I finally stood up for myself. She dismissed my feelings, called them tantrums and overreactions. She downplayed everything I said, everything I felt. And when someone dismisses your feelings like that, it's clear they don't respect you. If they can't even take the time to understand why you're upset, why you're hurt, then they're telling you exactly what you're worth to them. And it's not much. That's something I had to come to terms with. I didn't deserve to be treated that way, but for a long time, I let it happen. Don't make the same mistake. Now, I'm turning the floor over to you. What do you think? Was I wrong to walk away that night? Was there something I missed? Or do you think I did the right thing? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? I really want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And if you've ever been in a similar situation, feel free to share. I appreciate you sticking with me through this story, and I hope you take something from it. Thanks for listening.